All right, we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Well, guys, free agency is right around the corner. We are about a week away from free agency starting on March the 10th is when legal tampering will begin. So we did this a little bit on our social media, but wanted to kind of make a video kind of talking about each individual key free agent. Again, we're not going to get to every free agent for the Colts. If you want to see us talk about that, be sure to go check out our video a couple months ago, breaking down all the Colts free agents and all that kind of stuff. But we wanted to highlight a couple key internal free agents for the Indianapolis Colts, kind of talk about them, have some short videos, and run through the stats, run through all that stuff, and then at the end of the video, kind of make a determination, yes or no, on if we want the Indianapolis Colts to bring them back in 2025. So the first guy that we are going to start with is safety Julian Blackman, Derek. And Julian Blackman is a player that obviously was drafted by the Colts back in 2020 in round 3. He's 27 years old. He obviously was brought back on a one-year prove-it type of deal last year. So in 2024, Derek, Julian Blackman played in 1,083 defensive snaps, his career high there. 86 combined tackles, 1 tackle for loss, a half a sack, 4 passes defensed, 3 interceptions, 17.4 yards per completion, 103.2 passer rating when targeted, and a 14% missed tackle rate. So definitely, Derek, a down year from Julian Blackman from what we saw in 2023. But to be fair to Julian Blackman, he was dealing with a pretty significant injury for the majority of the regular season. I think after actually week 1, he was played through that injury pretty much the entirety of that season. So definitely saw his play decrease. You definitely saw him go down in some key areas there. So what are your thoughts on Julian Blackman? Like I said, he's 27 years old. So, he's still kind of in his prime right now, but Julian Blackman's a guy, Derek, that has been around for a number of years now, but the Colts are going to have to make a decision on him. And I don't think it's clear-cut either way which route they're going to go. What would you say in regards to your thoughts on Julian Blackman and your thoughts just overall on that position in general?
Yeah, so this is a 50-50 for me because, you could definitely get far, far worse than Julian Blackman and what you have. But I do feel like you could be a little better. It will definitely come down to Lou Anarumo and how Lou Anarumo feels about Julian Blackman. I would like to say that I think that, some of the numbers that when you look at, like, obviously you said a 107 passer rating when targeted, that's not good. A 14% missed tackle rate, that's obviously not good. So, some of the inadequacies in consistency and coverage is what hurts Julian Blackman and a lot of the missed tackles. And like you said, Cody, he was dealing with an injury for pretty much the entirety of the season. Like he said, after week 1, I got that. And I played the whole season through it. And I applaud the fact that he played the entirety of a season with a pretty decent injury. But it's just like the Michael Pittman thing from this year, Cody. Like, it became a point where, when were you becoming a liability to your team when you were incapable of fulfilling the job to your best abilities because you were injured again? Like, I get it. He was able to play, but he was not 100% himself. So him playing through the pain and the injury still doesn't change the fact that, again, he was injured again, and he was just able to tough this one out, but it still affected his performance quite a bit. So it hurts the argument for him again that, once again, he's just not he can't rely upon him to stay healthy. And it definitely becomes a concern. And obviously, the older you get, the safety room, the worse it usually gets in the injury front. Like I said, it's not a situation where I don't know what direction they're going to go with Julian Blackman. I really don't. They could go 50-50 on it. I really don't care. But I will say this, if you did keep Julian Blackman, then kind of just goes away on the need for a new safety. You'd obviously want to bring one in for depth, but I don't necessarily think you're going to go out of your way at that point to get a high value safety at that point, which there's a lot of options that you can do that for in both free agency and the draft. But that one, it's definitely going to be a little bit of a concern on how the Colts approach this. But like I said, it's going to come down to Lou Anarumo and how he feels about Julian Blackman and how he could or couldn't utilize him in his defensive scheme.
I don't know if I agree with the fact that even if you brought him back, you wouldn't address it in a major way because, like you just alluded to and you just said, you can't rely on him to play and be a legitimate guy. Like, as a third safety, I'd probably be more inclined to say, okay, you bring him back on a short, small-term deal and you go and get your guy. You know what I mean? Like, you don't rely on him to be a full-time starter. And I do wonder if the Colts' perspective has changed in any way regarding Julian Blackman and how they view him, even if they do bring him back because of that injury history. You know, he missed the season, the last couple games of the 2023 season because of that shoulder injury. So he has been injured a lot with the Indianapolis Colts in the last couple years. So that is definitely something to factor in. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. So Derek, if you had to have a final verdict here for Julian Blackman, do you bring him back or do you not? What is your opinion on that one?
Well, I mean, listen, I'm 50-50 on it. Like I said, I could see a situation where either way this could go. Me personally, I'd like to go a different direction, but if Lou Anarumo says that, they trust in Julian Blackman to be able to be more aggressive in their defensive scheme, maybe a defensive scheme change is what is going to improve the production of Julian Blackman. Or do they say, we understand that you played all year, but you were injured again and it affected your performance in a lot of ways. And it just kind of further proves our point that for the time that you've been here, you spent just as much time being injured as you have not being injured. So do we want to just try a different direction and maybe somebody is going to be better in pass coverage than you? I mean, I could see it both ways. I think it just truly comes down to I'm 51% get rid of him, 49% keep. Okay. Like if it's that close. Like if there's the ever closest disdain, I would rather just get rid of him and try something different. But 49% in the fact that I also don't think it's going to be insanely expensive to keep Julian Blackman this year. I don't think his market value is quite that high as in comparison to a lot of other safeties. But I think, like you said, there are some other safeties in this free agency class. Sure, you might need to spend some money on them, but you got some really good players that you can replace him with.
I think it depends on the price for me. Like if you can get him for a very team-friendly deal on another prove-it year, because Derek, I think the big thing with safety also that you didn't have last year was you didn't have any depth at all. You had zero depth at your safety room. So I would say even if you go and sign a big fish in free agency or draft a guy in the first round, bottom line is you still need depth. And I think Julian Blackman could be that. Right, for you, and it could step in, say somebody goes down. We know he can play both safety spots. So that would make some sense there from that standpoint. So I think if it's the right price, I'd bring him back, but also not rely on him to be the future at free safety. I would bring him back, but also say, dude, you got to go out there and compete for it. We're going to seriously address this position. And at the worst, he's your third safety. And I don't think it's a bad option to have Julian Blackman as your third safety. Because Derek, we know, like I said, he can play both positions, which is definitely important. And I think when he's healthy, he's a pretty decent player for you. So I would bring him back for the right price. But again, if he's going out there and a team's offering him a multi-year type of deal, I'm good to move on from him. But he knows your system. He knows the guys on your team already. And he also, I credit him because he played through that injury. So I would bring him back for the right price, but also still address it, in a pretty big way here coming up in free agency and or the draft. So That's just my opinion. What are your guys' opinion on Julian Blackman? Would you bring him back after kind of a down year in 2024, but a career year he had in 2023? So be curious what you guys think here when in regards to the Colts' former third-round pick in 2020. Let us know all those things in the comments down below. But, guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.